The moment the clip hit the internet, America stopped scrolling. Denzel Washington, standing in a dimly lit studio, had said 12 words that would detonate across every screen: "When Trump collapses, the GOP will run faster than he ever did." People laughed at first, memes, jokes, late-night punchlines. But then, like a prophecy snapping into reality, the cracks began to show. Resignations. Leaked texts. Shaky statements from GOP insiders sounding more like distress calls than political strategy. And suddenly, Denzel's warning wasn't a joke. It was a countdown. Now, 48 hours later, the scene was chaos. Cameras swarmed the Capitol steps. Reporters yelled questions no one dared answer. Inside, Republican staffers sprinted through hallways, clutching folders and half-deleted drafts of statements. The party that once stood behind Trump like a wall was breaking formation. Fast. Almost coordinated. Almost afraid. And Trump, isolated in his private wing, was watching it all unfold live on television. His face, normally carved into defiance, flickered with something new: disbelief. Betrayal. Panic. Because every name scrolling across the Chiron, every senator distancing themselves, every donor pulling out, was someone he once called loyal. Now they weren't just stepping back. They were bolting for the exit. And in the middle of this political firestorm, a reporter shouted the line that would define the day. Is this Denzel Washington's prophecy coming true? Trump didn't answer. He just stared at the screen, jaw tight, as if sheer willpower could force the narrative back into his hands. But it was too late. Momentum had shifted. Fear had replaced loyalty. And the GOP, sensing the ground shake beneath them, had chosen survival over allegiance. Exactly as Denzel said they would. By sunrise the next morning, D.C. felt like a battlefield after the first explosion, quiet, smoky, and tense, as if everyone knew the next blast was coming. The GOP wasn't just retreating now, they were rewriting history in real time. Overnight, statements appeared from senators who once praised Trump endlessly. Now their tone had shifted to concern, reevaluation, and the phrase that spread like infection: "We were not aware of the full situation." Reporters lined their quotes next to old clips showing the same politicians cheering Trump on stage. The contrast was brutal. Hypocrisy wasn't creeping out, it was sprinting. And the internet had receipts. Thousands of them. Each one proving Denzel's prophecy wasn't metaphor. It was a map. Meanwhile, behind closed doors at GOP headquarters, panic meetings stacked on top of each other. Donors demanded answers. Strategists whispered about exit strategies. One insider leaked a chilling line from a private call. "If we don't break from him now, we all go down with him." That sentence hit the media like a shockwave. Trump, watching from his residence, exploded in fury. Phones slammed. Staff scattered. Advisors tried to calm him, but his anger drowned everything out. "Cowards," he shouted at the screen. "They begged for my endorsement. Now they're acting like they never heard my name." And then, because fate enjoys drama, another Denzel clip resurfaced. From a quiet interview years earlier, he said calmly, "When power starts sinking, the first ones to jump ship are the ones who swore they'd never leave." It played across every network, matching perfectly with the headlines of the day. Commentators didn't even bother hiding their amazement anymore. "Is he reading the future?" one anchor joked, "or just telling the truth too early?" Outside, protesters gathered, chanting a line that echoed from coast to coast. Denzel called it. Trump had survived scandals before. He'd weathered storms no one thought possible. But this wasn't a storm. This was an exodus. By midday, the political earthquake had reached its breaking point. Republican lawmakers weren't just distancing themselves, they were issuing public denials that sounded more like confessions. One senator, pale on camera, insisted, "I supported the policies, not the man." Another claimed he had been misled. A third said he felt deeply betrayed. But the public wasn't buying any of it. Not when years of rallies, endorsements, and photo ops were only a scroll away. The internet roasted them without mercy. Side-by-side comparisons flooded every feed, past praise versus present panic. The GOP's sudden moral awakening looked less like courage and more like self-preservation. And once again, Denzel's voice, calm, steady, almost prophetic, became the anthem of the unraveling. Clips of him saying, "Truth doesn't scare the brave, only the guilty," spread like wildfire, turning into wallpapers, memes, and protest signs. Inside Trump's circle, the atmosphere was suffocating. Aides whispered about resigning before they were dragged into the collapse. Lawyers began scheduling emergency strategy calls. Even security personnel exchanged uneasy glances as tension thickened in the hallways. One staffer leaked a simple, terrifying sentence. "He knows he's losing them." Trump's fury turned into desperation. He demanded loyalty pledges, on-the-spot statements, anything to slow the desertion. But the machine he once controlled had shifted. The calls he made were ignored. The allies he summoned hesitated. Some refused entirely. And then came the headline that froze the country. Major GOP donor withdraws support, citing unsustainable future under Trump. Cable news replayed it on loop. It was the kind of blow that doesn't wound a campaign, it ends one. Denzel, watching from a quiet hotel room before a film shoot, simply closed his eyes and whispered to himself. "It's starting." By evening, Washington felt like a dam waiting to burst. Whispers from Capitol Hill painted a picture of a party in free fall. Private group chats leaked. Staffers were forwarding messages faster than they could type disclaimers. One thread, marked "urgent, internal only," revealed the truth no one wanted to say out loud. "If we don't separate from Trump now, we go down with him." The line spread like a digital shockwave. Commentators replayed it with stunned voices. Analysts dissected every syllable. And the public? They erupted. The GOP wasn't just panicking, they were admitting fear in real time. Years of unwavering loyalty had shattered overnight, and the fragments were cutting everyone involved. But the moment that truly set the internet ablaze came from a short, shaky video leaked by a junior aide. It showed Trump in a private meeting, pacing, red-faced, slamming a folder onto the table. As advisors tried to calm him, he barked. "Denzel is nothing. He's a Hollywood ghost. Why are we letting him control the narrative?" The clip hit 12 million views in 2 hours. People didn't laugh, they analyzed. They replayed the tremble in Trump's voice, the panic in his pacing, the desperation behind the anger. It didn't look like confidence. It looked like a man watching the floor collapse under his own weight. Meanwhile, Denzel maintained the same quiet discipline that had become his signature. No press conference. No gloating. Just a single post on X. Truth exposed doesn't need volume. It needs witnesses. The comments section exploded. Supporters called it poetry. Critics admitted it felt like a warning shot. And journalists declared it the calmest mic drop in political history. Yet the real twist came minutes later when 3 high-ranking GOP strategists abruptly resigned, without explanation. The collapse wasn't coming. It had begun. By the next morning, the political landscape looked unrecognizable. News anchors sat stiffly behind their desks, struggling to process the incoming updates. Overnight, 4 more GOP officials had quietly deleted pro-Trump posts, rewritten old statements, and scrubbed entire pages from their websites. But the internet never forgets. Screenshots flooded every platform within minutes. It wasn't damage control anymore. It was erasure. A viral thread summarized it perfectly. They're not abandoning him. They're pretending they were never with him. And nothing fueled the fire more than the morning's breaking headline. Internal poll shows GOP base splitting, historic drop in confidence. The numbers were brutal. Support was plunging. Donors were scattering. Voters were asking questions the party wasn't prepared to answer. Inside campaign headquarters, Trump was in full crisis mode. Staffers described him as pacing non-stop, demanding updates every few minutes. One insider leaked his most telling line yet. "They're running because they think I'm done. I'm not done." But the tone didn't sound like strength. It sounded like denial fighting a losing battle. Meanwhile, in the outside world, Denzel unexpectedly became the figure people turned to, not for political direction, but for emotional clarity. Clips of him talking about integrity, leadership, and accountability resurfaced like guiding principles in a storm. A particularly old quote hit the top of trending lists. "A leader doesn't lose power when he's challenged. He loses it when he stops listening." Commentators connected the dots instantly. Trump's downfall wasn't sudden, it was cumulative. And as if on cue, a massive protest formed outside the Capitol. Thousands held signs, but one stood out above the rest. Denzel didn't predict it. He just saw what they ignored. The movement had a voice now. Not a politician. Not a pundit. A storyteller who told the truth too early. And was proven right too late. By noon, the GOP's quiet retreat had turned into a stampede. Leaked audio from a closed-door strategy meeting sent shockwaves through every newsroom in America. In the recording, a senior Republican operative whispered the words that would define the day. "If Trump goes down, we need a lifeboat. Fast." The phrase spread like wildfire. Talk shows replayed it. Analysts dissected it. And voters, especially longtime conservatives, felt the ground shift beneath them. Trump's camp tried to push back, releasing a stiff statement insisting the party was fully united, but the cracks were already visible. Moments later, 2 key senators canceled scheduled appearances. Another postponed a rally. A fourth claimed to have family obligations, despite being photographed golfing 20 minutes later. The internet roasted them without mercy. "Family obligations equals avoiding a sinking ship," one viral comment read. Meanwhile, Denzel unintentionally became the anchor of the national conversation. Not because he wanted to, but because everything he had warned about was unfolding frame by frame. A resurfaced clip from years earlier went viral again, showing him saying, "People don't abandon leaders because of pressure. They abandon them because of truth." Those 16 words became the unofficial slogan of the day. Inside Trump's inner circle, paranoia spread fast. Staffers complained about phones ringing non-stop. Advisors held back-to-back crisis calls. One aide even requested to work remotely until the situation stabilizes, which insiders said was code for escape. Trump, furious and feeling cornered, reportedly slammed his fist on the table and shouted, "Denzel doesn't run this country. I do." But outside his walls, the narrative had already shifted. The more the GOP fled, the more the prophecy felt fulfilled. And the more the public believed Denzel had seen the collapse coming long before anyone else dared to speak. By late afternoon, the panic inside GOP headquarters had reached a breaking point. Staffers whispered in hallways, phones buzzed non-stop, and a growing sense of doom settled over the building like a storm cloud no one could outrun. The party wasn't just distancing itself from Trump anymore, they were scrambling for survival. A leaked memo, only 3 sentences long, hit social media and detonated instantly. Prepare transition plans. Do not attach public statements to the former president. Contain fallout where possible. The phrase, "former president," sent shockwaves through every political circle. It wasn't an official demotion, but it felt like a preview, an omen scribbled by insiders who had lost faith. While chaos swirled through Washington, Denzel remained eerily calm. A reporter caught him leaving a studio and asked whether he felt vindicated. He didn't gloat. Didn't smirk. He simply said, "Truth doesn't need applause. It just needs enough time to stand on its own 2 feet." That clip hit 15 million views in 4 hours. Meanwhile, Trump was growing more unhinged. Sources inside Mar-a-Lago described him pacing, demanding loyalty from advisors who no longer answered his calls. One insider leaked a chilling detail. He kept asking the same question. Who betrayed me first? But the real blow came when a group of Republican donors, people who had funded him for nearly a decade, held an emergency conference call without him. They ended it with a unanimous vow. We will not go down with a collapsing brand. That word, collapsing, hit every news channel within minutes. And just like that, the prophecy Denzel had spoken years earlier, the one everyone mocked, resurfaced everywhere. Power built on fear falls the moment fear changes direction. For the first time, even Trump's strongest defenders couldn't deny it. The direction had changed, night fell, but Washington didn't sleep. Every newsroom in the country had the same headline drafted, ready to publish the second confirmation arrived. Rumors swirled, Trump preparing an emergency statement, GOP leaders arranging a private meeting without him, intelligence officials reviewing newly surfaced foreign dealings that could fracture the party beyond repair. At 9:42 p.m., a clip leaked from inside a closed-door GOP strategy call. The audio was grainy, but the voice was unmistakable. Senator Mallory Reeves, one of Trump's most loyal defenders for years. If Denzel was right about this, what else was he right about? That sentence hit the nation like a slap. The internet erupted. Commentators replayed it relentlessly. For the first time, the GOP wasn't just distancing itself, they were admitting they'd ignored the warnings. And the warning they were referring to was Denzel's now iconic interview, recorded long before the scandals cracked open. If you let one man rewrite the rules, sooner or later the rules will come for you. Memes exploded, hashtags trended, and late-night hosts turned the moment into a cultural earthquake. But the real shock came when a senior Republican operative, anonymous but verified, spoke to a major network. He's radioactive. If we stay attached, we die politically. The exits are jammed, and people are pushing. That word, exits, ignited every headline. The narrative had shifted from collapse to escape. Meanwhile, Trump prepared to go live. Aides described him as agitated, pacing, rewriting lines every 5 minutes. One staffer texted a journalist. He's going to blame everyone but himself. You'll see. And America waited. Across town, Denzel ate dinner quietly with his team. Someone asked if he planned to respond to the chaos. He simply shook his head. This isn't my moment, he said softly. It's theirs. They're just now seeing the truth that's been sitting in front of them. The prophecy wasn't just unfolding, it was accelerating. When Trump finally stepped in front of the cameras, the room felt like a pressure chamber ready to burst. His tie was crooked, his notes shuffled, and his expression, usually defiant, showed a rare flicker of unease. The nation held its breath. Millions watched live. He opened his mouth, but before he could speak, a reporter shouted the question everyone had been waiting for. Mr. Trump, Denzel Washington warned months ago this would happen. Was he right? The blow landed like a hammer. Trump froze, not for long, just a second, but long enough that the silence became its own headline. His jaw tightened. His eyes narrowed. He forced a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. Denzel doesn't know anything, he snapped. He's an actor. Reading lines someone else writes. I'm the one leading a movement. But the tone was off. Defensive. Rushed. not the confident fire his supporters expected. Social media didn't wait. Within 3 minutes, the top trending hashtag became, #Denzel was right. Commentators replayed Trump's reaction frame by frame. Analysts noted the tremor in his voice, the tension in his shoulders. Even his usual allies seemed hesitant to defend him. A conservative think tank director tweeted, "If your empire collapses and the only response you have is to attack a Hollywood actor, maybe the problem isn't the actor." Inside GOP war rooms, phones buzzed non-stop. Donors demanded explanations. Strategists whispered that the internal polling had cratered faster than anyone predicted. The phrase, "irreversible damage," appeared in 3 separate leaked emails. Meanwhile, Denzel sat on his balcony, overlooking the city lights. A staffer handed him a tablet showing the trending topics. Denzel chuckled, not triumphantly, but knowingly. "I didn't want to be right," he said. "But truth doesn't ask permission." At that moment, his prophecy wasn't just a warning. It had become the defining narrative of a political collapse. By dawn, Washington felt like a city holding its breath underwater. Phones buzzed non-stop, alerts poured in, and a new headline dominated every major outlet. GOP fractures, senior leaders prepare to abandon Trump. The avalanche had begun. At 7:14 a.m. a leaked memo from inside the Republican National Committee spread across the internet. It contained just one devastating line. "We can no longer defend what the nation has already rejected." That sentence hit harder than any speech, any scandal, any denial. It was confirmation, not from critics, not from journalists, but from Trump's own political machinery, that the collapse was real. Reporters swarmed Capitol Hill. Lawmakers dodged cameras. Aides whispered that some Republicans were drafting a coordinated exit statement, waiting only for timing. One frustrated strategist told a journalist, "He wasn't taken down by Democrats. He was taken down by the truth," and Denzel was simply the first to say it out loud. Those words went viral instantly. Meanwhile, Trump launched into a frantic series of early morning posts, accusing the GOP of betrayal, Denzel of Hollywood sabotage, and the media of engineering a prophecy. But the more he typed, the faster the public mood shifted from outrage to exhaustion. For the first time, people weren't afraid to say it. The movement wasn't ending because enemies attacked it. It was ending because the foundation had rotted. Across town, Denzel stepped out of a black SUV and approached a community center where he'd scheduled a long-planned youth mentorship event. Cameras flocked to him, shouting questions about Trump, the GOP, the collapse. He lifted a hand, calm, steady. "I'm not here to celebrate anyone's downfall," he said. "I'm here because truth matters. It always has. It just takes some people longer to hear it." The clip exploded online. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quiet truth, spoken by the man whose prophecy had echoed through the most powerful halls in America. By sunset, the nation understood. A chapter had closed. A new one had begun. And Denzel hadn't caused the collapse. He had merely named it before anyone else dared to. And that's the story, folks. A prophecy spoken quietly, and a political empire shaking loudly in its wake. If this moment tells us anything, it's that truth doesn't need permission to surface. If you felt the impact of this story, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop your thoughts below, because this conversation is far from over. Stay sharp, stay aware, and as always, stay brave.